Yeah, as far as I know, as far as I'm aware.
Okay. I have not memorized it yet, but
So Andy, that hasn't changed, correct?
No, it's still the
Okay.
same.
okay. Well, good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Northborough Community Preservation Committee, our first meeting of the 2021-22 season. This open meeting is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law June 16, 2021. This meeting will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, the town of Northborough has been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of the Northborough Community Preservation Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows the Northborough CPC to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of the meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. For this meeting, I don't know if we have any participants outside of the members, but we will allow those should they come on.
I know Norm Corbin was planning to, he just texted me asking if the meeting had started, so I know he was planning to.
Norm from the Historic
Yes.
District Commission, yes, I heard that too.
The only issue with that, John, is and Leslie, if you want to send Norm the link, because the link that's on the agenda is just for people to watch the meeting, because it's not a public hearing. So there's different licenses that we use at the town hall as to whether or not public comment is part of the meeting or not. So tonight's licenses doesn't allow for public comment, but we can certainly add Norm in, and he'll actually show up as a board member. But
that's up to you, John. I mean, I know he wasn't planning to participate. You know, he just wanted to watch, or I'm sure he'd love to participate. He wasn't planning to be allowed to, but it's all your call, John, obviously.
Norm has special status. He is welcome to participate anytime.
All right, so just send him
if you want to, that's fine. But I suspect that he and some others may have thought that we were going to have discussion and presentation of applications, you know, with the applicants, but that's going to be the next meeting. So, but he's welcome to get on, and if he wants to comment,
I'm emailing it to him right now.
Sure. Okay, good.
Thanks.
And I trust Jim will let him in if he wants to talk. Well, anyway, welcome again, everybody. It's been a long time since we've met. We have a lot to talk about, but I think the goal of this meeting will be to go through the application list that we have. And then more importantly, we have Jason Little, the finance director, joining us, and he has an excellent presentation again. That was really helpful last year, and I look forward to it again this year. And I think we will, without further ado, hand it over to Jason for his presentation. Thanks for joining us, Jason.
Thanks, John. And I don't know if anybody else was here. I think it's all the same members that were here last year. But if you recall, we had terrible internet troubles last year. So I'm hoping that this year goes a little better with our technical abilities this year. I'm going to share my screen. This is the file that was sent around, I believe, to everybody earlier. Can everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So it's a nice view of the aqueduct here. Moving on, this is what I intend to talk about tonight. I'm going to go through the revenue budget, which determines what the 10% thresholds are for the purposes that are required for spending or reservations each year for the 23 budget. I will announce that that the town received a 39.42% reimbursement on November 16th this year, just recently, and that was significantly higher than what was projected for the budget. That the budget, I think, used an assumption of like 14%, and we ended up getting 39.42%. So that was a factor of the amount that's in the trust fund. So it's a little bit of a timing challenge for the state to give us a percentage rate to predict, because it's based on a trust fund that could have variable amounts going into it, and they basically deplete the trust fund in the fall when they make this distribution out to all the cities and towns that have adopted the CPA. So currently, I mean, I think the total pool that they distributed in November was $80 million, and you know, so what we received was a piece of the $80 million that was distributed to all the cities and towns. And a couple things happened. The state increased the amount of the registry fee that goes into the trust fund. So if you know, for the sale of real estate transactions, that's what funds the trust fund. Every time something gets recorded at registries of deeds, people pay a $105 fee to the registry, which used to be $35. So there's a much more significant amount going into the trust fund from these transactions. On the other end of it is there's much bigger parties that have adopted the CPA, like Boston and some bigger metropolitan areas have adopted it. So their surcharge is obviously a lot higher than ours. So they're going to take a much bigger share of that trust fund balance. And again, that plays into the revenue budget and that prediction for what percentage rate we're going to get based on this year's levy, which will get reimbursed next year. That'll be part of next year's budget. I'm going to go through what the balances are in each of the reserves. So what's available for you folks to consider for recommendations to town meeting this year. And then I'll go through the annual obligations of the spending and reservation requirements. And then, you know, we do have one item that debt service for the White Cliffs, which is dedicated to come from the CPA. So there will be an amount that will need to be provided for debt service for the White Cliffs. All right, so again, here's all the historical information. I know this number, these, you know, this screen used to appear much easier to read in the past because we had much fewer years on here. But now that we've had the CPA for all these years, you can see a history here of the town has levied about $8.2 million through this current year. I mean, when we send the tax bills out this year, it will be $8.2 million. The town has received a state match of $2.8 million actual. So as you see here, this is the 39.42% where the town received a $256,000 from the trust fund. For next year, I've been in touch with the DOR's Director of Accounts. They, again, have a hard time predicting what's going to be in the trust fund because it's basically zero right now. They don't have a magic ball that says how many registry transactions there's going to be or how many communities are going to join the CPA over the course of the year. So I have a commitment that using a 25% match estimate is going to be acceptable. So one thing here is if we estimate too high, the state in the fall will give us a hard time when we're trying to set our tax rate, because this is one feature of our budget that plays into the tax rate setting process. If we set it too high, the state won't allow us to set the tax rate. We'd have to go back to a town meeting and set our budget and so forth. So again, I have a confirmation from the state that a 25% match is acceptable. It's acceptably, it may end up being higher than that. 2 years ago, we had 29%. So it's probably pretty close to what it may be. We'll use an estimate that's increasing for the net tax levy of $600,000. So I think next year you can count on a revenue budget of $750,000. And that's what I recommend that the committee work with. So moving on to the reserves and available funds. the town has reservations that have been made over the past of the set asides for open space, affordable housing, historic resources, and then the remaining balance of unreserved, which could be used for any allowable CPA purpose. So those amounts are, you have $813 in open space, $128,000 in affordable housing, $5,800 in historic resources, and then a balance of $649,837 in the unreserved fund balance. And that is what is legally available to the committee to consider recommending use of. And as you can see, there's a little projected fund balance. So this includes the budget for next year. So as you can see, this number is going to grow if you don't spend any of this, because the this last year's town meeting for this current year, the revenue budget is higher than what was appropriated from it. So there's about $60,000 that will return to the fund, but that is not currently available till we close the books next year. So again, all of those fund balances added together is a total of these three numbers plus the $649,000 is $784,000. If you add that to the $750,000 revenue budget, you have approximately $1.5 million to consider being available to spend on projects and the annual obligations. And I'm sorry, I'll call this number out too. These were the total revenues for the CPA for FY21. Because of all the federal grants that have been happening this year, we've had a severe delay in closing the books on FY21. That number could potentially go up slightly if there is more interest income to allocate to the fund. It's likely not going to. I haven't finished that exercise. That's one of the last things I do before closing the books for the year. So that's just why that's highlighted, because there is a slight chance that that would change in a very immaterial way. Okay, so moving on to the next agenda item on my little presentation is spending reservation requirements. So you must spend or reserve at least 10% for open space, historic resource, and affordable housing. And based on a $750,000 revenue budget, that would be $75,000. And then for the administration article, it can be no more than 5% of that revenue budget, and that would be $37,500. And so typically we have no problem meeting those 10% thresholds, and typically we set the article for administration at that 5% threshold. And then the other obligation will be debt service for White Cliffs. And as we've gone along, we've made pay downs. We've had this in temporary financing. It's debt service. So depending on where the debt market is going at the time, we can't say for sure whether we're going to issue permanent debt or not. As it stands, we've had other temporary issues to issue alongside it. So it's made sense to continue reissuing bands. What BANS stands for, bond anticipation notes. It just means short-term financing, which only lasts a year. The requirement is that under law, we have to make pay downs as if we were paying on a bond, a principal amount. So basically the way this breaks down is that currently we have short-term financing for $1,090,000. We have an article from FY22 to pay down that debt a little bit. If we issue a bond in the spring, we will need to have a principal and an interest component for FY23 to pay. And so basically the way that works, based on the pay downs we've made and estimates using a 4% interest calculation, would be $185,800. And just to note, the reason that we're using kind of a high interest rate estimate is because there's no there's not really a disposition with the building. If it were to be established that there be a private use for the building, whereas if a function hall took it over, or some other private party rented it from the town, we wouldn't be able to issue tax exempt debt, which is obviously a slightly lower interest rate. So there's conservative amounts here. What ends up happening is we appropriate an amount and we would just pay down more if the interest rate is less, and pay it off faster. So as you see, like, we've made some estimates, on a 10-year schedule, and we've ended up paying down a little more than what those divided 1.7 million divided by 10 years would be. So that means the future years are less, there's less obligation in futures years doing it that way. And that's the conclusion of what I prepared in advance for the committee. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer any, John.
Jason, thank you. It's excellent information, as always. Back to the weight cliffs that you just mentioned. Do you anticipate then, we know it's an obligation, do you anticipate that 185.8 is the number we would go to town meeting with?
Yeah, I would recommend using that number, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to open the floor to anyone else that has questions on the numbers for Jason. Some committee members haven't been here as long and seen these spreadsheets as often. It takes a while to get some of the logic beat.
John, I would just add that there are a lot of numbers here. So, I know everybody just got these not long before the meeting tonight. So again, if anybody has any questions, I would be happy. If there are enough questions, I'd be happy to come back or address them offline for anybody too. There's a lot to digest here, obviously.
Sure.
Can you go back to the screen before this that shows, actually before that one?
This
One that is our reimbursement rate, is maybe it's the first one. The match. So just out of curiosity, I'm not sure if this is a silly question or not, but when you say the match, that's the 37% is what the state matched? Is that?
Yes,
down?
that's what that's the over the period of time between 2006 and FY21, the state has reimbursed 37%.
Okay, so that reimbursement amount, does that go back into our funding for CPC, or does?
Correct. That's a component of the revenue budget. So as you can see here, what I'm recommending for 23 is we will levy the surcharge on the taxes will be $600,000, and then we can reasonably expect $150,000 reimbursement on what we've levied in 22.
Okay.
From the state.
Okay. I get it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Feel free to speak up. Jason, a question about the affordable housing reserve. In an application that we have, it's mentioned that the amount voted at town meeting 2021, 65.2. It's being referenced in the application as being available to the project, should that project be approved by this committee and subsequently at town meeting. And so let's just say as of beginning of FY23, it's mentioned that it would be available. So is that valid? Can you just confirm?
Yeah, I'll confirm that this number here that is coming from the 65,200, which was voted last year's town meeting to come from this current year's revenues is available for appropriation for the next year. So,
Great.
so that's included in those numbers that I kind of subtotaled previously.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, so I know that application does include the consideration of this $127,000 here.
Correct. Keeping on that same application, it also references amounts granted to the Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation that are still held by the town of Northborough by agreement to be held until they're needed. And I'm going to trust that the numbers in the application are accurate. The applicant states that it was discussed with you to confirm that.
Yeah, correct. Yes.
And I think there's some interest component too added to them. So
yeah, there's really, that's what's left on our books for the amounts that were set aside from articles to transfer or to enter into agreements with the Affordable Housing Corporation. So
okay,
the amount doesn't vary. It will be what's left in those articles. And that matches. It appears to match what was on your agenda. You listed an amount on the agenda for that application, and it seems to agree with the numbers that I discussed with the Affordable Housing Corporation.
Very good. I just wanted that confirmed since you would unlikely be joining the next hearing or discussions on the application. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other members' comments on the numbers or questions? Please feel free.
Thank Jason again for this very clear presentation. It's a vast improvement over prior years.
Yeah, I agree, particularly not being in person. And I think we used to get the spreadsheet and all try to decipher it. And it's great that you distill it for us. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
And the picture looks bright. We have a good revenues and good balance to consider, and we got a lot of applications to consider. So it'll be interesting discussions. Anything else for Jason from anyone? Hearing none, I'll thank you again for making the time to come and for putting this together for us.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoy coming. And again, if there are any questions that arise outside of the meeting, I'm happy to either come back or answer them offline. So again, like I said, I acknowledge that there's a lot of numbers here and it's a lot to digest. So thanks for having me here.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks so much. Feel free to hang around if you like hearing us talk.
I think I will continue doing a little work, but I'm going to exit the meeting. So thanks for having me here.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jason.
We are the funnest committee in town, that's for sure. Okay, my suggestion is a brief overview of the list of applications that we have. Open comment about question on what the application is to get some of that out in front of us, since I anticipate our next meeting date would be the start of public hearing. And therefore we'll have, at least some of the applicants present. I suppose we'll have to probably determine breaking up the list into 2 meetings, see what people feel about that. But so that said, I'm just going to read each one off and then open it up for anyone who has a question about it. And the committee member who knows that answer can chime in, or Kathy for that matter. And otherwise, we'll just go on to the next one. If that sounds okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of grouped with the first group being historical, followed by open space rec, followed by housing. So the first bullet item is Brigham Street Burial Ground beautification. Application request 137,500. And from my reading of it, this is to clean up, organize, provide boundary and signage for the Brigham Street Burial Ground.
Yeah, no signage, actually. The signage is already there, but everything else, you have to remove dead trees, clear that up, and then also to delineate the property with a fence along the front. And some parking provided by the town.
Very good. Do you know how the budget was arrived at?
Quotes were gathered. I mean, Norm's here. Do you want to let Norm speak to that directly, or?
I was
Actually, John, all the budget information came from the DPW. So it's Scott was able to pull that together for us.
Very well, thank you. So Scott's estimate at this point in time, not a formal quote per se.
That's probably correct.
Good, thank you. Any other questions on Brigham Street burial application at this point in time? Okay, the next bullet item is Howard Street Cemetery signage for the Kaiser section. 5,124. And what is the Kaiser section, Leslie or Norm?
That is the section that is, if you're coming down Maynard Street, Whitney Street. It's not very well marked, but there's an entrance to the Kaiser
Okay.
section, so it's the newer section.
The new cemetery.
And it
Thank
also
you.
comes out on the Howard Street side at the very far end of the cemetery. So we're talking about a sign on the Whitney Street end and then one on the very farthest boundary entrance on Howard Street.
Two signs.
Yes.
Very well. Third application in the historical group is Historical Society Shutter Restoration, $55,000. It looks like this application was put together by the Historic Society folks. Any comments or questions on it from anyone? Very well. Fourth on the list, Assabet Park fencing, $20,000. This application seeks to replace and repair chain link fencing along the street on the 135 side. I have already asked in my head, and I've already asked in an email, and I think that I will ask the applicant how this couldn't have been covered in the Assabet Park project that was approved by the committee in town meeting
Exactly.
for over $500,000, and I'm wondering if there isn't a provision in their contingency that they could use or wait till the project's finished to see if there's leftover money, but that's just me.
Mhm.
I
hear
was
that.
wondering the same thing.
I hear a couple of amens.
Yeah, you bet.
Not a lot of money, but just given what else is on the list, it's hard. The fifth one is design and project management for dog park. So we saw this one coming. $35,500. And I believe this is, this is for the feasibility assessment at the site that they believe we can do. So there certainly has been public support preached for that, and in the open space survey, and in public forum. Questions or comments from anyone on the dog park?
It just says it's up to 5 sites that they're gonna do, but we don't know where those are at this point? Or do we?
I think that there's a knowledge of where they are, and that probably the applicants will describe them. But I don't think, I think part of the
But the-
study is to determine which is going to be best
Right.
fit and easiest to get approved.
Given the previous analysis, I'm surprised there were this many potential options. So I'm interested to hear what they have.
Yeah,
I'm assuming they're just trying to leave every option open. Since there's been some resistance in the past to certain sites, and not been as easy as had been anticipated maybe to get this happening. But there's some good volunteers behind it, so I suspect we'll get a good presentation. Sixth item on the list is design of ADA accessible trail at the senior center. This will be presented in more detail by the Trails Subcommittee. I did sit in on one of their meetings and learned a little about it. It's a good project for a trail that's basically a relatively short loop that begins and ends at the senior center, and fairly low budget to put it in, but a lot of support for it at the senior center and by the Trails Committee.
This
Nice
wouldn't
little
happen to
project.
be this wouldn't happen to be an old Frisbee golf place, would it?
Yeah.
I believe there are some views of the fairways on the loop, but
oh, man.
no one would prevent you from bringing a Frisbee with you.
The trees are down, might as well go for it, man.
Yeah, they started it.
Something like that, yes.
Oh, my God.
Oh, God. Any other questions on that application? The next one down is preliminary design of pedestrian access on Aqueduct Bridge. This too is sponsored by Trails Committee as well as the Open Space Committee. I've sat in on some meetings regarding it, but in summary, the ability to open pedestrian access on the Aqueduct Bridge connects the Aqueduct trails, which were open to the public over the last few years. And of course, the restoration of that and the use of the aqueduct has been a popular speculative project for CPA for a long time. So this application is for preliminary design, detail, and feasibility. There was a previous feasibility study that will be referenced. So this would really represent the first phase of what would be necessary to make that happen and connect that entire stretch of the aqueduct across town and between the other towns. Any questions on that one?
It's a big one.
Yep. Looks expensive, as a lot of these engineering studies do. Next project down is Conservation Fund. This is an application sponsored by the Open Space Committee for additional funds to be put in the conservation fund for purpose of land acquisition and or conservation restrictions. Questions on that one?
Mm-mm.
Okay, next one down is Housing Authority, creation of 8 senior rental units. The application is 1,440,000, but it is linked to the bullet below it, which is essentially not so much an application as the Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation's recommendation to utilize existing funds that were awarded by town meeting to the NAHC held by the town that I referenced earlier when Jason was on with us, as well as the current historic reserve amounts also referenced when Jason was with us. And the application does the math, and I did it myself here. The net need for a CPA application is $836,821. That's a big project. If you read the application, it also though includes 1 million of state funding kicked in. So it's really a $2.4 million project with $1 million from the state, and then the rest from Northborough. Oh, I'm sorry, there's a 200,000 from Housing Authority reserves or savings that I understand is involved. Questions, comments on this project? Anyone?
I'll just add quickly, I know you can read the application, but the best part of that project is it would give us 4 handicapped accessible units, which is a great need for right now. That's one of the biggest benefits of the project. We're fortunate to have the land available at the Village Drive site, which is the one behind the library off. And the housing is actually off Summer Street there. So there's a space available to build. Obviously, it's a big number, but that's the state match certainly helps, and there's a great partnership with Northborough Housing Corp. Obviously, they're committed as well, and I think it speaks to the comments from master plan. More affordable housing, more people downtown. It kind of fits into that nicely as well. We obviously discussed it at length with the Housing Authority, and we're hopeful that it will be given consideration this year.
Andy, do you know if they considered a way to make all 8 handicapped accessible, or was it a matter of not enough land for them all to be at ground level, or what?
Yeah, it's simply the space would only allow a footprint of the 4 units. So the second floor units, would be non-ADA compliant. Obviously, to get into putting in elevators and that sort of thing, it drives the cost way up even more so. So that's the reason.
Assuming, yep. Anyone else comments on this project? One thing that I will add to this, some data. Some of you might recall that at town meeting and in many of the recent presentations, I tried to keep track of the cumulative percentage that as a committee we're approving and the town is approving for the 3 key categories: historical, open space, rec, and affordable housing. And I didn't do that yet for catching it up for this year based on what was approved last year. But roughly speaking, we were at not quite 5 million in open space rec before last year, 4.5 million in historical before last year, which included White Cliffs. And it included the total of White Cliffs, by the way, not the bond payments. And we were 1.7 million in affordable housing. So if we're thinking balancing, if that's part of our mission, we've been more heavy in open space and rec, which is not surprising. Our committee, CPA, started in Northborough with a lot of support for open space preservation. Obviously, we have a lot of historic resources that we've gone after, White Cliffs being one of them. So, I think, and as Andy mentioned, the master plan includes a focus on affordable housing and senior housing and so on. So this project has a lot of support, follows a lot of our plans that are laid out in the town. And should we continue with that logic and consider approving it, it is a significant portion of what we have available. Speaking to that, on my own agenda, I wrote the next bullet as White Cliffs, since we know we have to pay into it, and Jason gave us the number, as well as the admin account, 5% of the $750,000 number we're going to use for our new revenues. So taken together, that's over 220 in new revenues that we'll be committing to those. It really leaves us with about 530,000 in new revenues, plus the potential reserve, 784,000.
John,
Yes.
I guess I just would point out that White Cliffs isn't done yet, right? So I don't know, in my view, before we take on another large project, we should maybe finish the last large project that we've taken on, right? So, I always have in the back of my mind that this committee voted to take on this project and this building, which we know is going to need a significant amount of more money from somebody in order to put it back into some sort of productive use and restore it. And this is one of those places that money's likely to come from.
Yeah, no disagreement with you on that statement.
Has there been any further, as the White Cliffs Committee, has there been any further progress on ascertation of what it might be? I know there was sort of a use thing last time, but has there been any progress of like, this is the direction we want to go, or?
There really has not been a lot of, there's been a lot of stuff going on, so that's not been the focus for a lot of the development activity. So we have not yet had we don't have a proposal yet as to what's going to happen.
So Todd, when you're talking about that, are you talking about like, so the affordable housing project, is your assumption that that's going to be a multi-year deal in addition to the funding that we're going to, that we could assign to it out of this year's thing, or multi-year? I guess I'm asking, is that the expected 800K expenditures or something that's on a multi-year deal for the housing project?
I don't know, right? My only thought is that the last kind of the number that I saw for White Cliffs was someone's going to have to come up with a neighborhood of like $6 million in total to do something over there, right?
Yep.
And that's a combination of money from us plus private person who's paying rent or whatever to over there. And I don't want to spend all of the, my view is that still project is still there and something's going to have to happen to it.
Todd, my feedback would be, you make a good point. But when we judge projects each year and we look at their suitability, and community support and, urgency or timeliness, if you will. And even though, so let's take the housing project as an example. It checks the boxes. The project amount is the amount needed to build it, not the first phase. So it's kind of it's a one-time approval, at least the way I understand it. And it's a return on the investment in the NAHC that we've paid into for 4 or 5 previous cycles of town meeting. Whereas, as you just said, there is no current plan for what we need money for at White Cliffs, only that we think we need money. And when we do need the money, we then have to come back and figure out how do we justify that as being valid for CPA again, if we're not continuing to restore the building, you know what I mean? We have to see which category we're able to fund it on. So it's a quagmire. You're right, and everyone on the White Cliffs Committee knows it, and town staff knows it's something that we have to continue looking at. But without a plan that says, we need X for the next 5 years, then we're not being asked to consider anything other than paying the bond amount. So in one sense, we need to act on what's in front of us. And maybe your point is, let's be cautious about the reserves, where we've been a little bit less conservative the last 2 cycles. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. There's all of the projects have merit, right? I don't think that's not really the point. The point is government never has all the money it wants to do stuff. So we got to make choices, and we made a choice on White Cliffs. My point is only that there should be money in the bank for when the time arises to deal with it.
Well, to your point, then, I know you're frustrated by it. You've spoken to it at our last meeting in April. And my frustration personally is that because we're not to the point yet of what that plan would be, only that we assume it's some big nut, we don't have much to strategize for. If you're suggesting that as a committee we should budget for it, so to speak, then I'd like to see a proposal for what that strategy is. But absent any target, it's kind of like we know we need, X millions, and we don't have X millions in any one given year. So what does that mean? But it's certainly a point we need to continue to discuss, and I agree. I agree with that anyway.
A quick question, John. Did you say that there was basically an 800 plus additional net funding required for the housing authority proposal that's there? I mean, it's for 1.4, but that the funding, the Affordable Housing Corp is going to transfer money to it, but still there is a net need in this request for 800K on this year total.
Yeah, basically the net project request is 836. And the application states that with that, plus our committee's approval, that NAHC funds can be released for the project and that the reserves can be voted to the project. Gives the net of 836 that needs to come from this, or I should say FY23's decisions.
So that's
the number.
over half our total budget or total funds available. That's the bottom line on that one.
That is the bottom line.
I could just make one comment regarding the White Cliffs, and Todd obviously brings up an excellent point. We've made a commitment to that project, but I know it's been about a year since the committee met. I don't see that we're going to see any real action between now and the time we have to make our decisions. I don't think I'm speaking outside the box or anything on that, but that's still going to unfortunately remain an unknown. And I think the numbers you mentioned are probably very, very conservative from what we've heard. They certainly haven't gotten any cheaper.
I think, Todd, your point is only, we got to start saving irregardless of what the answer is, whatever the proposal is. We got to start putting money away for that solution when it comes down, because there's no one else. The likelihood of funding coming from any other direction is low. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. We committed to this. And all of you have permission to be frustrated over the lack of progress at White Cliffs. I'm not gonna say you shouldn't.
Well, I think I haven't forgotten that I stood up in front of the town meeting and we pitched our pitch, and it got approved, and that was deemed a success. So I will tell you, I feel some responsibility for that, but I don't think that the CPC and CPA that we need to feel like it's the only way to pull it off, because there's no way without a lot of borrowing against CPA, we're not going to fund the whole thing from CPA money. And as I mentioned before, I don't think the work per se that needs to be done can be funded in total by just CPA. There's not, there wouldn't be justification for a lot of the work that is not just restoration. It's, all the expected costs to make the building usable under current code and so on and so forth. Of course, we always find ways to be creative in that, but anyway, your point's taken. I think it's two excellent positions on it, with Andy Dowd's included as well. And Andy Dowd, from what you know of the housing project, is it conceivable that it could be broken into phases, approved by the CPC, under over 2 years as an example? Or do you believe it needs to have the full commitment in order for the building contract to be let?
To my knowledge, the biggest issue there is the state, in order to get that $1 million matching from DHDC. We'd need the commitment to fund the project through all of the sources, one being CPC. I can certainly verify that, for our next meeting and once we fully discuss it. But that's, I think, the key issue there. They're not going to fund it unless we have a full commitment.
Further to that, are there grants involved or state funding that is time sensitive to this year only, or do you know anything about that?
I believe that funding, would be available in the current year, and it's like many funding sources. It's an unknown what the funding availability would be in the following year. We know it's available now, which is one reason why we suggested moving forward with this project. So that's, again, that's an unknown in the future, how that would play out if we were to wait.
Also, John, if I can add, on the Housing Authority project, that is something that has been actively in the works for well over a year. It's probably closer to 2 years, 2 to 2.5 years. Rick Lee from, the Affordable Housing Corporation, and Lynn Marino, although I think I have her last name incorrect, but the executive director at the Housing Authority, they've been working and meeting with the Department of Housing and Community Development. I think originally there wasn't any money that was coming from the state, and they've been able to meet with the state to at least get that the commitment that's shown in the application. So I mean, as everyone else too, the projects weren't just made up last month, but they're, and because it's a construction project and contingent on, like Andy said, the state needs to see, before the state will go ahead with the funding, they need to see that all of the funding is in place before they'll release their funding for the project. So I don't think it's quite like some of the other, like say, recreation or projects where we've been able to, spread it over 2 years, but and they've been able to put the project off for a year so that they could get, 2 years worth of funding, in a
Yeah.
1 year ahead of when they wanted to start the project.
Right.
So do you want to go ahead and the January 6th would be your next meeting? I mean, if you stick to, the schedule in the past, the first Thursday.
I think that's a good date. I had one more question about the housing project.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
That's okay.
I just wanted to get that date out there for folks.
You
but-
transitioned a little quickly. It will, I just wanted to ask, Lynn has been the point person for the project, I presume, and will she present or be involved, as far as you know, Andy Dowd, at a public hearing?
I would expect, I know she had mentioned trying to listen in tonight, but that somewhat of an issue, but yeah, she'll definitely be presenting, maybe along with Rick Lee from Affordable Housing Partnership, where they're a big part of that. That's my assumption, but we'll clarify that.
Good, okay, because the application spells out a lot of the background and a lot of text, but just to get all of the context of regarding the size of the project and the state commitment that you spoke of, I think that would be important for the committee to hear more detail.
Sure.
Now, Kathy, having said that, yes, I would propose the next best first Thursday, and that would be January 6th, and we should, because you got to post the notice of open hearing pretty much now, right?
Yeah, if you want to go forward with January 6th, yeah, within the next week, I need to get the notice in the newspaper. I mean, we have time to do that. You're not up against a deadline as in tomorrow, but
Right, that's fine. Now, so assuming we meet at 7 o'clock again, and try to keep the meetings of reasonable length. I want to open the floor to members' comments on, can we handle all these at one meeting or try to? And think about it this way. I think there's 3 historic projects. Similar people can be presenting. We could, look at those as a group. We have really 2 rec projects between the park fencing and the dog park. Then we're going to have the the accessible trail, the aqueduct bridge, the conservation fund, that'll all be presented by the same people from Open Space and Trails. And then we have the housing project. Which probably would consume the most time, but I think we could schedule them all for the same night and carry over to the next meeting. Do our best to get through at least the initial presentations. And then should we do that, the next first Thursday is February 3rd, can we wait until then to make our final deliberations? If we were to do so, that's still sufficient for town staff, do you think?
Well, I didn't think of this before the meeting, John, but to sort of have everyone look at their schedules, but the warrant, the town staff and boards always have a deadline to submit the warrant articles, ahead of when the general public, if there's any coming from the general public. So the deadline for staff and boards is February 3rd, I believe, which is that Thursday. Is that, do you happen to be looking at that, Andy?
It's usually that first week of February, Kathy. I don't
Yeah.
have the exact schedule in front of me, but that's.
Yeah, so it could-
there is flexibility with that.
Yeah, so I think it's the I think it's the 3rd, but so I was thinking that given that just the sheer amount of projects that you have, that would you want to consider meeting twice in January so that, and even though you might not be voting, at that second meeting in January, if you voted at that meeting in February, that, we've got some leeway, a couple days there to get the warrant articles drafted.
Do you need to post each date that's an open hearing? Or just the first one?
Well, it doesn't have to be the second. If you continue, you meet on January 6th and say you continue to whether you continue to another time in January or another time in February, that doesn't have to be advertised in the newspaper. So that's just a regular agenda. It would be a continued public hearing, but it doesn't
Right.
require advertising.
Okay, that's what I meant.
But I'm just thinking, given the schedule to get the warrant articles in, and just also to, for me to be able to notify the applicants to let them know that, they, perhaps they do need to set aside 2 nights in January.
I suspect we're going to need the 2 dates in January.
Yeah. I think
I'm
that's
sorry, what,
prudent.
Peter?
I suspect we're going to need the 2 dates in
Yeah.
January to get through it.
Yeah.
Yep.
If we spaced it 2 weeks apart, and then the second one be January 20, is that a clear
Yeah.
date?
And I will, tomorrow I can just double check. Thursdays really isn't a super popular night, because we need a license and we need a host. But because usually Mondays, Tuesdays, and now Wednesdays have even become hard to get the meeting, the licensing and the host.
Right.
But I can just double, I'll look for the 20th and I'll just shoot everyone an email tomorrow to let you know that whether that's available or not.
Okay,
Okay.
then
Yep.
if members can handle it, need to block out January 6th, January 20, and February 3rd.
Actually, I'm sorry, you know what? I just checked the calendar and there is a master plan meeting that night. They are the 3rd. They are the 3rd Thursdays of every month. And that at least involves Rick Leaf.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and of course you, yeah. So the 20th maybe is not the one to look at, John. Not that you have to meet on a Thursday, or if you want to look at the 27th.
Yeah, let's do that. Maybe maybe really our goal can be then to try to hear presentations, hear any follow-up, and make our determinations by the 27th. And we may not need a meeting after that. So we'll go to be determined for
Yeah.
that.
So
Would
I'll
that
put
be
you
okay
in,
with everybody?
and I'll put you in for the February 3rd too, just as
Yeah,
a
just-
tentative, just so that we've at least got the host
Okay.
and the license for that night.
So John, is it your thought to have 5 or half of the projects discussed on January 6th and the other half on the 27th?
Well, no, I think we should put them all on the list for the 20th and
The 20th?
try
The
to,
The
The
6th.
sixth.
Okay,
I'm sorry, the 6th. And try to,
okay,
keep each presentation brief, and
okay.
leave open to have return visit, should it be necessary, or, sometimes questions arise on the projects that the applicant doesn't have and they need time to go back and get it. And that would give that opportunity. So I'm thinking we could get through it if we manage the time well, one to the next.
Do you think that, or any consideration of starting at 6 or 6:30? I just don't want it to feel rushed.
I understand. If there was a majority that wanted to do that, I wouldn't oppose it, but I'm personally, it's tough to make it. And I also don't like to plan for meetings that are
Mhm.
3 hours. I think it's too much. We do over, we do go over, and it's likely we may, but
Okay,
historically I've found that if we can't manage it tight enough to keep it close to 2 hours, then we start to lose it.
I trust in the gentlemanly but firm guidance of our chair to keep everything on.
I was looking for that support. Thank you, Peter. Checks in the mail.
I have to cut out, but I just thank you for letting me join and wish
you,
you all
Norm.
the best for the holidays. I think I'm going to be seeing you in early January.
All
Thanks,
right.
Norm. We look forward
Thank
to
you.
it.
Good night,
You're a
See you,
regular.
Norm. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night, Norm.
Night.
We have another agenda item, which is consideration of the April 8th, 2021 minutes that I know everyone remembers vividly.
Hmm.
I move we accept the April 8th minutes as proposed or as submitted.
Second,
I'll sec-
beat ya.
Andy's motion, Leslie's second. Give it to you. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call for your vote to approve the minutes. Andy Dowd,
Aye.
Andy Clark,
Yes,
Todd,
Yes.
Millie,
Yes,
Jeff,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes,
Peter,
Aye.
and me, John. Yes, minutes are approved. Thank you. I have one more piece of business or question. Kathy, is this going to be your last meeting with the Community Preservation Committee, or will you be with us in January?
I was just gonna say to you, can we say there's 2 more things? So this is my last meeting with all of you. I'm retiring.
Mm.
And I'm retiring as of I know, thank you. As of December 31st. So this is my last meeting with my very favorite people on my very favorite board. And even though you're not supposed to have a favorite child.
where do Gonna go back and watch all the videos of all the other meetings and see if you said this to all the others.
I have not. I have not. But so yes, it was, you know, I mean, it's obviously, it's been something I've been thinking about for quite a while. And it's time, and I'm very excited about it, as I'm sure anybody would be, planning their retirement. But I do honestly, and this was not planned for John or I to do this, but it has just been a joy to work with this committee, and most of you have been on this from the very beginning. And so I just want to really, from the bottom of my heart, it has not been work to work with you. It's been so pleasurable, so fun. Just the personalities on this board I love the meetings, and it's just so exciting and so unique too in municipal government to like actually see a project from start to finish, and the fact that, you know, way back when with, you know, John Campbell, Rick Leaf, you know, starting out advertising, you know, gaining support for the adoption of the Community Preservation Act, and then all these years of working with you. And I can't say enough about this group, and it's been fun, and like I said, it really has not been work to be with all of you. But this is my last meeting, and it's very bittersweet. And, you know, administratively, I'll take care of you, and the position, my position has been advertised. So you know, I don't know that you will see a new town planner, you know, in the time span that you meet, but it's you know, it's obviously, you know, it's, like I said, it's been advertised, and you will certainly have someone new for your cycle next year. But thank you all.
Kathy, having worked with you for many years in many capacities, I can't say enough good things about you, and thank you for everything.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Makes me wish I had been on this board longer.
It's a
You'll
great
be
board, Millie. Stay
Yeah.
on it.
You'll be
And the
sorely
fact that you have
missed.
money, that's, you know, it's just the most fun board to be on. You have
We had money until Todd started talking.
Yeah.
Now it's all gone.
We can blame all that on Kathleen Polanowitz, who is no
Yes.
longer on the
Excellent,
board.
right.
Yeah,
It's always
cut
easy to
land,
blame
We
the
can
person
blame
who's
her
not
while
here.
we're in the hole.
Yeah.
I will find a way to let her know. Well, Kathy, just from me, I want to say it's been a pleasure working with you, and a ton of fun for me too. It's been great to learn more about the town, learn more about the town staff, learn more about you, become friends, and you know, it's been fantastic. I don't know how we'll do it without you, but you know, from the very beginning, you were so supportive. All the work behind the scenes made it easy for the committee that didn't know what they were doing, and you know, now we've developed our own clockwork, I think, and you're a very large part of that. So you are irreplaceable, but we'll give it our best. Thanks again.
Thank you all.
Excellent. Well,
Gonna
don't
be a
be a
big
stranger. Yeah, I know.
I think they should just
You know-
retire the position. Just like no more town
Yeah,
planner,
yeah.
you know?
Exactly. We got it. We got this covered.
Yep, shoes are too big to be filled. Don't even bother trying.
Well, no, thank you. You're all very sweet. But yeah, so this is a little weird. This is my last meeting, but
How many years? 30 what?
35.
Oof.
35. I'm not
Long
old
time to
enough
do
to have
anything.
worked here. For
No.
35.
No.
No,
Now you get to figure out what you want to do when you grow up.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. You must have started as a teenager.
Oh, thank you.
Now, having graduated almost the same year, we unfortunately know how old we are. All right.
Exactly. John and I went to the same college. We didn't know each other in college, but
Oh, wow. I don't know that. That's cool.
And
You're funny.
didn't you guys live very close to each other too, right?
Yes, and we practically lived across the street from each other.
Oh, wow.
So that was
Oh, yeah,
obviously
yeah,
before
my,
John's involvement with Northborough, but
Correct. I lived in Grafton,
yeah,
you know, 100 yards from me, basically.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Funny.
yeah.
Just over the line. Too funny.
That was all kismet, I guess.
Oh, again, Kathy, it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You'll have time on your hands. You can watch on YouTube.
Yep.
What the heck?
From
There's
St.
probably
John.
other things I'll be watching on YouTube, but okay.
Yeah, come on. Take time
John
for
might
it.
even elevate you like he did Norm today. If you yes, really nicely.
Exactly. Honorary permanent status. Absolutely. Will there be a staff person online at our next meetings? Do you happen to know, by the way?
Indeed.
When I'm back in the office next Monday, that's one of the things I'll be talking, not specifically on Monday, but next week, talking with the town administrator as far as how that's going to get handled.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. I don't have an answer for you just yet.
No, fair enough. But Melanie will still be our,
Yes, yep, Melanie
Scribe.
Melanie will continue to do the minutes.
okay,
And Melanie's in our office too for a few hours a week. And so I think between the my administrative assistant and things that I'll prep for her, that I'll share with you, all, and it sort of just some fine tuning will have to be done, but I'll prepare the articles just as if all 10 were going forward, but then you can go accordingly so that at least you've got the basic outline for town meeting.
great. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, well, hate to leave you, but I don't think we have anything else to talk about. Any other business, anyone?
No?
Just
Okay,
lots of
so-
stuff to read before the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if anybody wants, it goes without saying, I know you all know this, but if anybody wants hard copies, just shoot me an email and we'll send you a packet. Because I know it is a lot to, some of the applications are pretty, lengthy. So
Mhm.
just let me know if you want paper copies.
Very good. So we've agreed 7 PM on January 6th, and Kathy, you will post the advance notice, and
Yep.
we'll write the agenda with the articles, with the applications in the list, just like we have it here.
Sure.
And we'll encourage all applicants to come prepared for brief presentations. Fantastic. Anything else, people? Then that said, any motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Peter. Is there a second?
Okay.
Second,
Thank you, Millie. Roll call vote to adjourn. Andy Dowd,
Yes.
Andy Clark,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Millie,
yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
And me, John, yes. Thanks, everyone.